Hey, what's going on, Guardians? My name is the Black Link, and today is Thursday, September 30th, 2021. Y'all know what that means. It's time for another issue of the Bungie Weekly Blog, This Week at Bungie. And this time around, we're going to be learning a bit more about some of the changes and stats tied to Trials of Osiris, plus a few changes that are going to be coming to Grandmaster Nightfalls starting next week. But first things first, let's go ahead and see what Bungie had to say about Trials this week. Last weekend was the third weekend of their ongoing test and learn strategy with Trials of Osiris. The two big changes this week were running the Trials Labs Capture Zone mode and tweaking the Flawless pool to enable Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Here's some updates on what the data looked like in week 3 of Trials. The solo win rate remained high at about 27%, and the solo blowout rate was 37% prior to enabling the flawless matchmaking pool and dropped to 30% afterwards. These are consistent with the numbers that they had in week 2. Non-competitive matches, those 5-0 and 5-1 blowouts, were 55% on Friday and Saturday, and dropped to 51% on Sunday and Monday, which again is very consistent with week 2. They go on to state that we saw solid sub 50-second matchmaking times all weekend, aside from early in-card matchmaking protection, causing a slight rise up to about 75 seconds during the middle of the night in North America on Sunday and Monday. I think that's more than understandable. Overall, they had 667,000 players participating in Trials Labs, which is down about 33,000 from week 2, with 220,000 players going flawless. And they had about 100,000 fewer matches played overall, which is roughly the same average matches per player. One dataset they found particularly informative is average hours played by skill. This shows us that the mid-range of skill, aka the average Crucible players, are playing between 1.5 to 2 hours more on average. Meanwhile, the average hours played at the higher end of the skill range has barely changed at all. That's a good statistic. Rather, that statistic is a pretty good sign. It means they're not driving away the better players from the game mode thus far. Anyways, moving on, they say that they did find one bug with the way the pool-based matchmaking interacts with disabled pools. It collapses them down into the previous pool. Unfortunately, the setup for aiding matchmaking for the first few wins of the week causes an unintentional flawless mini pool for the first 2 wins of the card. If you went flawless and are on win 0 or win 1 of your reset passage, you preferentially match against other flawless players in the same state. Once you get to win 2, this goes away. And I think that actually lines up a lot with the experiences of people on week 2 when they first introduced the flawless matchmaking pool. They noticed that as soon as they jumped in, they were just immediately thrown into this noticeably smaller matchmaking pool. So I'm glad they got that figured out. But it does serve as a somewhat of a nice confirmation that you weren't crazy if you thought you were in the flawless matchmaking pool as soon as you started playing Trials last week. You were absolutely correct. Anyways, next up we learn a bit more about how the Trials Labs last week worked out, which apparently, according to Bungie, went very well. Though there are some changes that they're looking to make the mode better. First, they want to find a different way to vary the capture zone location without giving positional advantage to either side. Internally, we initially tested a single central zone, but found that it created dull, repetitive games as it always collapsed the usable map space to that central location. The current method uses a central tiebreaker position as center and A and C positions from control during advantage rounds. We use those points to get the mode into testing quicker, but unfortunately, that had the side effect of giving one side a major advantage. We like the dynamism that created when we playtested internally, and that might be a good mechanism in a less competitive mode, but we heard you loud and clear that significant of an advantage is too much for Trials of Osiris. We are looking at authoring additional neutral capture zones in a few maps to support further labs this season. We may still play around with a milder advantage position to use in extreme cases depending on the map, but we want to make sure that we have at least 3 neutral locations. Really happy to hear about that. If you listened to the Planet Destiny podcast this week, we talked a lot about how it felt making a preferential spawn didn't quite feel right in a game mode like Trials of Osiris. It created some, well, we'll say really unfavorable and toxic scenarios within the game mode itself. So I'm glad to see that Bungie's moving away from that. Anyways, the next change is they're going to remove the gain super energy on capture feature from the capture zone in Trials. This, specifically after an elimination, leads to more snowballing, allowing one side to generally generate their super energy faster than the other. Again, that's in line with some of the changes they just discussed. Definitely agree with it. But that's all the big changes coming to Trials of Osiris in the near future. Remember, of course, there's no Trials this weekend because we've got Iron Banner live. Trials will be returning next Friday. But additionally next week, we've got the start of Grandmaster Nightfalls. This pinnacle version of Nightfall Strikes is going to require that you have a power level of at least 1345 to get started. And along with GMs, we've got a list of changes that are going to be coming to the game mode over the course of the next few months. I think these are actually slated to drop sometime around the 30th anniversary in December. Here's a quick recap of what exactly is going to be changing with Grandmasters later this season. The Grandmaster Catch-Up node will become available at the same time Grandmaster difficulty is available, so long as you have the Conqueror title but have not yet gilded it this season. Grandmasters will have already gone live by the time this change comes later in the season, but the catch-up node will be available when Grandmasters first starts in seasons going forward. If you don't know, the catch-up node is essentially a node that allows you to pick different Grandmaster strikes. You don't have to run the one that's currently available that week. You'll be able to pick any of the seasonally available Grandmaster Nightfall strikes and run them. This is for people who've already gotten their Conqueror seal in prior seasons so that they can get their gilded Conqueror seal without having to wait until the very end of the season. Next, each Grandmaster Nightfall will be available if the fire team leader has not completed the gilding triumph for that strike during the season. In other words, you may play each featured strike for a season to earn your gilded title. Once you've gilded your title, the catch-up node will no longer be available. So the node itself is literally going to be living up to its title. It's for those out there who have completed their Conqueror seal and want to gild it so that they can just get all those strikes out of the way. I mentioned before when Bungie first announced this a couple TWABs back, I kind of hope that they go back on this decision. It's probably not going to be a case in this season, but in the next season with Witch Queen, I would love it if the catch-up node were just a normal active thing and you could just run whatever Grandmaster Nightfalls you wanted to. Yeah, I get it. Everybody's just going to run Lake of Shadows. But I mean, at that point, when you're somebody who's already at the absolute pinnacles of power, you've already put in your time, gotten up way past the hard cap and reached Grandmaster levels for power level, I think it'd be better to just let you play whatever you want and get whatever rewards you want from the Grandmasters. That's just my opinion. Anyways, speaking of loot, in terms of loot, there aren't any major changes happening. Completing Grandmaster Nightfalls gives you the chance to earn adept variants of Nightfall-specific weapons, such as the Palindrome hand cannon or the newly released Hothead rocket launcher. Players may also earn enhancement cores, prisms, and ascendant shards for their efforts. We recently made a change where adept weapon mods for impact, charge time, blast radius, and projectile speed can now be acquired from Grandmaster Nightfalls in addition to Trials of Osiris and raids. Good luck out there, Guardians. Fire team up and take on the darkness. And don't feel shame if you need some guidance, mind you. There are plenty of creators throughout our community that are eager to provide tips, tricks, and in-depth guides to help you on your way to the Conqueror title. Including, of course, yours truly. But alright, Guardians, that's pretty much it for the biggest bits of news contained in this week's issue of the Bungie Weekly blog, This Week at Bungie. Interesting stuff in there, definitely psyched about the return of Grandmasters. Gonna be diving into that to farm up as many adepts as I can. And of course, if you're looking for a quick way to power level yourself up to relevant light, Iron Banner's still live right now. Go visit your boy Saladin. He's got plenty of pinnacles for you to gain. But that's it for this one. That's the news and those are my thoughts. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. I'm out for now. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.